Hello, everyone, friends, listeners, amateur investigators, lend me your ears. I have to tell you that if you don't know where that saying comes from, it came to mind as I was getting ready to put this program together for tonight. Kelly, welcome. Lois Lane, Allie, Lois, hello to you too. As I was saying, Greg, what's up? If you don't know where that saying comes from, it's actually friend, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. That comes from Mark Antony's speech from Julius Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. Dee Dee, welcome. Always good to see you in your Wonder Woman picture. And the reason that speech, the reason I opened up the show tonight, and of course a lot of people aren't going to know that I opened the show this way until they watch it on YouTube. Allie, what's up? Charlie, Stephanie, I'm glad you remembered it's Wednesday. The reason that I opened it up with that is because there is a line in there about, if you've ever heard the saying, the evil that men do, it's from that speech by Mark Antony in Julius Caesar. And as we go through what we're going to be talking about tonight, and most of you already know that, Nicole, welcome. Angela, Sherry, Bobby, good to see you. The evil that men do. We're going to be talking about the original Night Stalker being caught today at the news conference, a very evil man. And then we're also going to be talking about this man, Ronnie Dean Busick, along with his partners, Phil Welch and Dave Pennington. Those two guys are dead, who we now know killed the Freemans and then eventually strangled and murdered Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. So that saying about the evil that men do has been on my mind recently. It is maybe, my favorite band is Iron Maiden. They have a song called The Evil That Men Do, and I was actually listening to it before I started this show to kind of get me in the mood. Hello, Lisa, Barbara, Angela, hello to you too. So we're going to be talking about a lot of evil tonight. There's no way around it, not just on the part of the men who committed these crimes, but maybe a lesser evil, but still evil, of the people who knew and did nothing. That I'm not going to be able to get away from that topic as well as we go through all of this. And Kelly, welcome. Anne, all these people tuning in tonight, everybody I know is very eager to talk about these topics. But the entire saying with the evil that men do is, the evil that men do lives on and on. The good is buried with their bones. That is the line from Mark Antony's speech in Julius Caesar. And it's certainly true in the cases of the original Night Stalker and Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman's disappearance, and now we know murder. We, the rest of us who are still living, we have to live with the evil that these men did. And so do these families of all the people who were murdered by this guy, Joseph James D'Angelo. And then, of course, these men who killed the Freemans and then Laura Ashley as well. We have to live, the rest of us, with what they did. And we have to try to figure out why they did it, what would cause people to do this, why do people have to be this evil? We have to deal with the evil that they wrought, of course, in the original Night Stalker's case going back to the 1970s, and then with Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman back to December 30th, 1999. Hello, everybody. Anne, Andrea, welcome. Greg, Criminology is currently running a very good podcast series on the Golden State Killer. I'm sure it is. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. The evil that men do. And may I say, men are just not exclusive. Of course, there's some women out there doing some this, some of these evils. Well, Shannon, you tune in for as long as you can, Shannon. I know this is not topics for everybody, but we're going to talk about it. We want to talk about it. We have to talk about it, not because we view this as entertainment. You know how much I despise thinking of true crime programs as entertainment. Mine is a news show. My goal is to inform people. And how do we learn from this? Because we have to deal with the evil. What can we learn from this evil and apply it to other cases that are still outstanding, other serial killers, other disappearances? That's going to be the goal of our discussion tonight. And we're going to go until we're done. It's probably going to easily be the longest program of Unfound Live on Facebook that we've done. Hello, Christina. Good to see you, Jill. Welcome to you as well. First, I'm going to start out with this week's case. Usually we don't talk about this week's case to the end, but I'm going to talk about it now. And then we're going to get into those other two topics because I just don't know how long these other two topics are going to go. And I want to make sure that I get to cover the disappearance of JR Molohon on this program. Because that is this week's case. He was a 62-year-old from Norfolk, Virginia. On August 3rd, he dropped his wife off at work. She thought that he would be picking her up later that day. Well, she went home early because of a migraine. She came home to an empty house. His surfboard was missing, something he displayed in his man cave. And his phone was left in his office. 2 days later, his vehicle was officially found in Corolla, North Carolina. That's out on the Outer Banks, out there by Nags Head, etc. It was parked on the beach. You can park I guess Daytona Beach as well here in Florida. But you can park your vehicle on the beach there, and that's where his vehicle was found. And, of course, this is a case that kind of mirrors Tiffany Daniels' case that I guess we covered about 2 months ago. Here up there in the panhandle of Florida, had her mother, Cindy Daniels, who I've gotten to know very well. This is like the male version of that, except this guy's in his 60s. And, of course, he couldn't have been sex trafficked or anything like that, most likely. But it's been since August 3rd, 2015, that his wife, Julie, has tried to figure out what happened. What makes this case difficult is that if we start thinking that, well, maybe he went out into the water, you're going to hear about how most people who go into the water and have a drowning episode in that area of North Carolina, Corolla, Nags Head, only one person has never been found. And it's not JR Molohon. And we don't even know if JR is there. Nobody saw him there. His truck's there. His surfboard was in the truck. His clothes were there. But nobody saw him get out of the truck on that day, even though we now know that that truck got there during the day on a Monday, on a beautiful Monday on the beach in North Carolina where other people were. Nobody remembers seeing JR. So we don't know. And hearing the statistics about drowning in that area, the odds are not very good that he actually went out there and drowned. But you're going to have to decide that for yourself. Andrea asked, is your interview with his wife? Yes, my interview is going to be with Julie. Julie, I've gotten to talk to her a few times. In fact, I traded emails with her, or messages on Messenger today. And she was looking for a couple things for me. And what's interesting about her is that she actually kept a diary when this happened. You know, she wrote down all of her feelings and everything that were going on when she came home to this man that she had been married to for over 2 years was gone. And she sent me some of those entries. And that's why this episode is going to be called Diary of a Disappearance, because she logged all the feelings and facts that she felt and could remember as they happened back in 2015. It's the first time I've heard of it on any case that Unfound has covered. Pamela, welcome. Dana, welcome. Thank you for the thumbs up. Shanna, I've got to get up at 2:30 a.m. this morning ship, but I'm watching. Okay, Shanna, well, you can catch it on YouTube if you fall asleep. It'll be on YouTube before the night is out. You can watch the whole thing at your convenience. That's fine, Shanna. I hope you just don't fall asleep because of me. But if you fall asleep because you're tired, that's fine. So Julie kept this diary. I'm not going to share the diary entries in our interview or in my summation. I'm not going to share them here, but she sent them to me and I got to read them. And it's amazing, I think, how much that can help people recollect, because I run into a lot of that with guests that I talk to, that they don't remember those specifics. They remember feeling sad and everything, but the things that our mind kind of weeds out and just concentrates on, like the big picture, sometimes details get missed. And that she was able to think in the moment that I need to write down all the things. Now, the good thing is she was a writer anyway. She'd been writing poems and short stories for years, so it was very natural for her. And once again, this is why I'm calling this disappearance Diary for a Disappearance. And there are some things surrounding JR that we've run into in other disappearance cases. He was having a few family problems, not with Julie, but with somebody else, one of his daughters. And hello, Sherry. And yeah, I think it's a great idea. Wow, that's amazing to have a diary of the events. You're right, Andrea. He was having some problems with one of his daughters from a previous marriage. JR, in the years before he disappeared, had been fighting depression. And at one point, he had a Percocet addiction. And he was getting Percocet through illegal means. Not that he was going out and stealing or anything, but he had a pusher. So these are all things that you're going to have to consider when you listen to the interview this Friday to figure out what happened to JR Molohon. His truck's found almost 2 hours away on the beach. It's very easy to believe that he went out into the water and never came back. Maybe depression took him over against something. But like I said, Julie has been able to talk to the police down there, people who are responsible for the safety of swimmers and right there close to the shore. And they said they've only never found one person who for sure went in the water. Everybody else, they've either found out in the water or the body has washed ashore. Of course, JR, none of that has happened. And once again, nobody saw him. So it's very much like Tiffany Daniels. Do you believe she went out into the water and drowned, or something else happened? It's the same kind of situation. And I have to tell you, in both cases at this point, I'm pretty sure Tiffany Daniels didn't go in the water. And I don't know if I am as sure, but I'm more than 50% sure that JR didn't go into the water either. So, but you ultimately, the listeners, the people who listen to these cases every week, you are the ones who eventually get to decide. We just present the facts. Myself and Julie are just going to present the facts. She is a woman who is, I believe, deeply in love with her husband. She tells how they met, which is a great story, and their romance, their marriage, and she to this day just can't believe that it happened. Totally out of the blue. Shanna, no way. Love your post. Just watching while I unwind on your live streams. Thank you, Shanna, or Shauna. And Jackie, welcome tonight. Thanks for tuning in. So that's going to be this week's case this Friday. I would like to thank Fran Masucci, who got me in contact with Julie. And once again, this is the disappearance of JR Molohon, Molohon. It's on charlieproject.org if you want to check it out. He disappeared from Norfolk, Virginia on August 3rd, 2015. His truck was found 2 days later in Corolla, North Carolina. I should note that people did see his truck down there the same day that he disappeared on August 3rd. And this episode is going to be called Diary for a Disappearance. Andrea, it was 2015. There you go. Mandy, glad you could tune in tonight. I hope you're enjoying your books, your Volume 1 and Volume 2. Allison, welcome tonight. So we have that. Just a couple things I want to remind you about before we get into original. We're going to go to actually Laura and Ashley's case next, and then we will hit the original Night Stalker last. Just want to remind you, the books, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3 will be finished tomorrow. I was going to finish it today until all this stuff happened and had to keep posted on that. But Patreon to PayPal had some generous contributions recently. I want to thank all of you for that. Makes it possible for the shirts and books that I give out to guests. So I deeply appreciate that. You can find Unfound for PayPal at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. And for Patreon, you just go there and just do a search for Unfound. And all you could donate, $2 a month. Thank you. That's all I can say is thank you. Let's go to Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman's case. Let me just read a couple things here. Lynette, you can email me personally, and we can talk about that, how you can get a book. Darlene, welcome. Darlene, it's interesting you know that Lola's Disappearances in Volume 3. I was reading our interview from last year once again. It's amazing how some of the things that I forgot, it was very interesting. Going over to make sure it looked right. And Suzanne, can't imagine what his wife has gone through. It's been tough for Julie. Thank you, Suzanne. And Dana, Ed, I suppose you give these cases so helpful. Thank you for all you do. Keep up the good work. I can't watch the full broadcast now because I have to get up at 4:30 a.m., but I'm following. Dana, thank you. You go to bed. Sleep well. The beginning of this week, I think there was some rumblings before it actually happened, but I will tell you that I was watching it. I found out, just like the rest of you did, that Ronnie Dean Busick has been charged with the deaths of Dan and Kathy Freeman, and then with the eventual murders of Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. He had two partners. I do not believe he was the leader of this group. I think it was one of the other guys, either Phil Welch or Dave Pennington, depending on how you view it. But this, we now know, and frankly, between all of us, I think we got a lot of this right, although I think we got some things wrong too. And we're going to talk about those things. How can we learn from that? Jay, welcome. Jay, welcome. Jay, everyone should know, is a new member of the Unfound Podcast discussion group, and I'm very happy to have him in the group. One of the newest people there. The way this crime went down is that Ronnie, Phil, and Dave, this was a drug deal gone bad. The way I read it, I read the affidavit, unfortunately, very quickly today. Lots of things going on the last couple of days, as you all know. But this was a drug deal gone bad, whether Dan Freeman owed them money or they went there looking for a deal or just going to take the drugs and the money. And we are to believe that those three guys showed up at the Freeman residence, the trailer. The drug deal was going down or something like that. The girls were in the back room, and these three guys didn't know that they were there. And they surprised them. I think what happened was the girls tried to get away, and I think the guys went after the girls, and then the one stayed behind, and I think murdered execution-style Kathy, and also shot Dan in the face. And we know the story. You've heard the story of how Lauria and her husband ended up finding Danny the next day after the police and firemen had already left. Unbelievable. So I think these three guys did not know that the girls were there, which is something that I suspected, although I have voiced another theory on the case that maybe the girls were the target in this crime, in the original crime. That is not the case. It was my other first inclination that these guys, whoever did this, didn't know the girls were there and were surprised by them. That is what happened. And so these three guys, it seems they didn't know what to do with these girls. I don't think any of these three guys had ever murdered anybody before that night. I don't think so. I've not read anything to dispute that. But they didn't know what to do with these girls, so they took these girls with them. And what happened over the next several days, I didn't see how many days. I'm going to say several, is between like 4 and 7 or more, 4 or more, or 5 or more. These three men proceeded to rape Laura and Ashley, torture them, And then if we are to believe this, they were strangled to death. Both these girls were strangled to death. Now, what you learn in reading the affidavit is this was not a secret in Welch, Oklahoma. In fact, what we have found out, if you read the affidavit, is that a lot of people knew. In fact, some of them knew fairly quickly after the crimes were committed. Maybe not that night, maybe not even the next day, but within the first week to 10 days, yes, they did know. Just regular people, all of them lowlives, who were into drugs with Ronnie, with Phil, with Dave. These people sound like girlfriends of some of these guys. They knew, they never said anything. It's pretty clear from the affidavit. Let me just read some things. Jay, I do not believe the nurse. I think that's a total something that has nothing to do with this. She's not mentioned at all in the affidavit at all. Nothing. But maybe that's something that will come out eventually. But at this point, the nurse is not mentioned in the affidavit at all. Allison, I was so completely shocked by hearing there was an arrest. I'm still pretty shocked. I've followed the case forever. Allison says, Jay, the sedan, Carrie, thank you for joining. It's clear that a lot of people knew about this. Now, on top of that, not only did these men do all these things to Laura and Ashley, but they took pictures and showed other people Polaroids. That just shows you how far long ago this was, 1999, when Polaroids were still a thing. But they showed pictures of these girls to others as a way, I don't know if to impress people or to intimidate people, but these guys only showed these pictures to particular people. They just weren't out there. But I guess what I'm saying is people saw pictures of Ashley and Laura bound up on this bed. In fact, some of these women who police eventually interviewed said, yeah, I knew that bed. I knew that bed. I knew that bed sheet. I knew that bedroom. These people knew exactly where these pictures were taken and have never said a thing in all of these years. Now, they claim fear. I think something else. I think something else. I think that they kept their mouth shut because these guys were their avenue to more drugs and maybe even free drugs, and they wanted to keep the drugs flowing. That's what I believe. I think that they say fear now, but I don't believe that at the time. I'm not saying they weren't afraid of these guys, but I think that these people were thinking of themselves and their drug habits first. Why do I think that? Because we know how many cases Unfound covers where drugs are an issue. And the people who maybe are into them are not as scary as these three guys, and still people keep their mouth shut. As I wrote in volume 3, and when it comes out you'll see it, that it's hard to understand this relationship that all druggies have. That they want to get together, they can't wait to get together to do drugs and everything else, they'll forget everything else, but if one of them ODs or something like that, the rest of them just push that person away. They just dispose of that person as if the person never existed. These are the kinds of people we are talking about in the disappearances of Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. They are some of the worst people on this earth. Poor girls, Jay says, I think the witnesses knew the perps had connections to law enforcement. Once again, Jay, nothing in the affidavit says anything about that, although we will touch upon something kind of like that in a moment. Alice, I'm curious to know if one of the girlfriends of either of the two dead men destroyed the photos after their deaths, so police couldn't find them. I doubt the pictures are still around. Well, it's funny you should mention that, Allison, because that's in the affidavit. It turns out that now they never name any of these women. You just know they're women. They don't name them, just use initials. What happened was one of these women, one of these guys had the pictures. I think it was Phil Welch. He had a briefcase with the pictures in them that he would carry around. Well, he went to jail and left the briefcase at home. And one of these women, so this whole fear thing, he's in jail. This woman finds the briefcase with the pictures in it. Remember, she has nothing to fear from him. He's in jail. What does she do? She takes the briefcase, puts it in the trunk of this car that eventually went to the scrapyard. That's in the affidavit. You can read it for yourself. There's a link to it in the Unfound podcast discussion group. It's a Dropbox file that you can read. I think it's a PDF. Dorothy, drug addicts will steal from their own families to get drugs? Absolutely. So this whole fear thing doesn't quite fly with me when one of these witnesses has the opportunity to take that briefcase directly to the police. This guy's in jail. It's not like he can stalk her or anything else, and turn this in. And she would have easily been put in protective custody. Didn't do it. Didn't do it. Why? Because Phil was her access to drugs. And I will continue to believe that. It's just what I think I've learned. You know, I have in every book that I'm writing, I'm going, what I've learned, this is what I'm learning about this. So they were at this address. Now there's some. So the pictures are out there. They went in a car that got scrapped. So I don't know if that means compressed into a box. I don't know if it was just flattened. It's some junkyard in Oklahoma. Then I suppose the police could go to that car and try to find those pictures. Maybe. I don't know what condition they're going to be in now. They're Polaroids. They're probably, pretty trashed by now. But they could probably go give it a shot. All of these men pretty much talked about the Freeman murders to these people. And there's a discrepancy as to where they were in relation to the Freeman residence. The address that I have is 412 College Street, Pitcher, P-I-C-H-E-R, Oklahoma. Now, somewhere it says that this place was very close to where the Freemans lived, and I know what their address was, where their trailer burned down. This College Street address is nowhere near where the Freemans lived. So I'm not sure what to think at this point. They were not just right down the street. It was like 40 minutes away or something like that. So I don't have an answer for that right at this second, because it's been out there that, well, it was right down the street where these girls were kept and everything from the Freemans. I don't know for sure about that. And I'm just looking through them. If you're wondering when I'm looking off to my left, I'm looking at my notes. I have written here, leaves me the impression that lots of people know the answers. This is an overall question that it leads me to believe that a lot of the cases that Unfound covers, there are people out there who know. And people who did not commit the murder or the crime or whatever else happened in these disappearances, there are people who know and are saying nothing. And I don't care if it's a case that's 2 years old, 19 years old, 18 and a half years old, like this one, 20, 25, 30. People know. No doubt in my mind. Mary says drug addicts will also cut a deal with the police so they won't go to jail for their crimes, so they continue using. Sure. Andrea says, so frustrating. I get it. So this is a case that it was not a huge mystery. People were talking about it. People had seen the pictures. We know how well known this case is. I mean, it was well known before. And I'm not saying that Unfound had anything to do with these guys getting caught. I don't believe that. Just kind of the way it worked out. But I will say that Lauria, in her statement to the press in Oklahoma yesterday or the day before, she did say that it was younger people, younger generation taking an interest in this crime that she thought kept it out there, so the police had to do something. She gave credit to people who have kept it out there. I guess I'm one of those people. Great. But I would not say that Unfound led to the solving this case. But this is the first case where the perpetrators have been caught. We have to remember, Ashley and Laura are still out there somewhere. They are still out there. Now, from the affidavit, what these guys were telling people is that these two girls were thrown in a pit. But to my knowledge, they've not, I don't know if maybe they've looked, but Laura and Ashley have not been found yet, not to my knowledge. Yes, Bobby, you hit the nail on the head. People know. And Bobby, absolutely true in your father's case too. Absolutely. Absolutely 100%. And Jay, you're right. She is a warrior, Lauria. Um, so people know, and the reason this case could have been solved years ago, if not within the first year, is that these guys made a mistake, a fairly big mistake. And this also shows you not only that there are people out there who know about these crimes, but these crimes are not perfect. And this is a case where you find out that we, the public, didn't know everything. The main piece of evidence that we, the public, didn't have, at least not to my knowledge, and I know it didn't come up in my interview with Lorraine. Maybe she knew and didn't want to say. Possible. If that's the case, totally fine with it. But an insurance card for Phil Welch's girlfriend, or his car, was found near the Freemans the next day. And private investigators found it. And still, the cops couldn't put the connection between this insurance card and her and Phil Welch. They could not make that connection for some reason. Because, once again, these guys did not commit a perfect crime. This insurance card that was out of nowhere, she claimed that she didn't know, or let me make sure that I am getting that correct. Let me make sure. But this insurance card was out there, didn't know how it got out there. She knew exactly how it got out there because her boyfriend, Phil Welch, was borrowing her car. And somehow that insurance card fell out of the car. And she claims, I don't know how it got out there. And, and she didn't even say that Phil Welch was driving the car. She just said, you know what? I don't know. Maybe it fell out of the car and blew away. I don't know. But you can't get much closer to a perpetrator than talking to his girlfriend. And the cops could never talk to Phil Welch right at that time. Hard to believe. Sarah, welcome tonight. Joey, thanks for joining in tonight. We're talking about Laura's and Ashley's disappearance and, what is going on in the last few days. Shani, welcome. Hope you're enjoying your book. I saw the picture you post. Thank you. Lois, she did know. She did know. You're right, Lois. She did. She did. Allison, after knowing about the insurance card, don't understand how it wasn't solved sooner. I agree. But Jay is right. We're going to talk to, thank you, Jay. The next part of this is that these private investigators, their names are Joe Dugan and Tom Pryor. They were working together. They were hired, actually, by the Freeman's family, extended family. Of course, Kathy and Dan were dead. Joe Dugan and Tom Pryor had gotten these guys' names. They had collected them. They took the info to the Craig County Sheriff. The sheriff blew them off. Joe Dugan died in 2009, and what happened? His family got rid of the material, got rid of the information that was collected. These two guys, these private investigators hired by the Freemans, knew within 3 weeks who did it. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. But it took us to April 23rd, 24th, 2018, 18 and a half years later, for the government to figure out that these three guys did it. Disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Jay says, Craig County, I'm guessing, Jay, you live there. It's so corrupt, guys. It's wild. Dorothy, witnesses put her same color in the Freeman's driveway at the exact time. That's exactly right. If you will read some of the accounts of the disappearances, you will hear about a dark-colored sedan that was seen in the area around the time of the fire. Well, guess whose car that was? That was Phil Welch's girlfriend's car, and him driving it. Once again, couldn't put it together. So these private investigators, they knew within 3 weeks, and in fact, when they turned this information in, what Tom Pryor, he is still alive. Tom Pryor says that his PI license, they threatened to take it away if they didn't butt out of the investigation. True story. And I want you to know this. I've heard this about this kind of thing happening in other cases elsewhere, not just in Oklahoma. Here in Florida, in Alabama, Arkansas, some of these places where private investigators have gotten involved. I've heard these kinds of stories before. Carly, welcome tonight. Thank you for joining. Yeah, Allison, they couldn't put it together. Sure. So the Craig County Sheriff at the time was Jimmy Suter. Now, we heard about this long lost info. Here's what happened. It does seem that the investigators were kind of doing their job. Excuse me. I'm going to have to take a little bit of my drink of Publix Deli Diet Green Tea. All right. Jay says Scooter was a tweaker, allegedly. Well, maybe, Jay. But after Scooter was gone, they found, let me get this right. Where is his name here? Come on, Ed. Okay, Craig County Sheriff Jimmy Suter, Sooter. They found a lot of long lost info in his office. It's been unseen for years. This was information similar to what the private investigators collected. This is what got this thing kind of jump-started again in actually 2016. If you read the affidavit, really the cops started hitting this heavy again in 2016. They started interviewing these people again. But there is this long span of time where it is obvious that nobody did anything about this case in Craig County. Shaney, does anyone know why these men did it? It was a drug deal gone bad, Shaney. Whether Dan Freeman owed these guys money or they were just there to rob him, this was the motivation. The story goes that Ashley and Laura came out of the back room. These guys didn't know they were there. And they killed the parents and just had to take the girls with them because the girls could identify them, which is something that I've expected for a long time. Was Phil Welch's girlfriend living at the home where the girls were held? I don't believe so, Sherry. I don't believe so. Dorothy says, yes, I heard about this about PIs in Arizona too. Yeah, probably. But these women knew, some guys knew about what was going on. And this case could have been solved years ago. They had the insurance card. They had the description of the car. They had the PI work. They had all of these things. They knew that it was probably a drug deal gone bad, and they couldn't find these three guys. It's just something that just does not seem possible. Now, so something that I got wrong. Here's what is kind of surprising to me about this case. I had kind of predicted a scenario that was kind of like this, that it was a drug deal and guys went in, shot him up, etc. But these guys are older than I expected. I was visualizing that it was more than one guy that did this, 2 or 3. And I was thinking guys in their late 20s and 30s. Well, this was 18 years ago. And I think Ronnie Dean Busick, he's well into his 60s now. And the other guys were younger, but these were not young men. These were not early 20s. These were guys into their 30s and 40s doing this. I have to say I'm a little surprised by that. So I got that wrong. Let me read some things here. So did that old sheriff who had all this just ignore it, hide it for a reason? We don't know, Nicole. I've only read the affidavit. I don't know how deep they're going to get into that. I don't know. Did he hide it? I'm guessing he didn't hide it since they found it. I don't know. Lisa says Dugan's family tried to give his files to the sheriff's office and they wouldn't take them, so they destroyed them. That's right. Mentioned that. At least that's what the affidavit said. I'm appalled at law enforcement. They could have easily found the girls alive and then done their job. I think that's a possibility. Lisa, I think that is a distinct possibility. And, Mary reminds us, that's another part that I didn't even put on my notes. That's right. Law enforcement did allegedly murder the Freeman son. And I wonder if that infected. Thank you, Mary, for bringing that up. Thank you very much. Mary gets a real good shout out there. Thank you. That's right. The police had problems with the Freemans. The Freemans thought that their son had been murdered by these cops. I think that probably factored into this as well. Thank you, Mary, for bringing that up. Dang, very nice. They could have put 2 and 2 together. Shani, maybe the police and the men were working together like the police off. Mr. and Mrs. H, not too surprising. Maybe. Maybe, Jay. It's just not what I visualized. This wasn't. I probably also because as people get older, they tend to commit less crimes. You know, most of the violent crimes and things that are done, at least in the United States, are people into their 20s and early 30s, men in their 18s, 20s, and the early 30s. Maybe that's why I was thinking that way, Jay. Allison, Sherry, I think they could have put 2 together but didn't care enough to. Maybe. But I think you're right. It may have something to do with the son and him getting murdered long before this all happened. Shannon, can the Bible sue the former sheriff for negligence or incompetence in this mishandling of the case? It seems like he deliberately turned a blind eye to make sure the perps were not held accountable. I don't know. I don't know if... And weren't the parents going to sue the police department? That's true, Allison. They were. They were. In fact, they were about to talk to a lawyer when this all happened. It is very... But I just want to say, I'm just reading from the affidavit. We can theorize about the conspiracies with the police. I'm just telling you what the affidavit says. And as I've already stated, it doesn't look very good for the police. There is not one police officer except in the very recent present that comes across good at all in this affidavit. Cade, it's just disgusting. Nepotism and backwoods drug deals are the underlying thing for sure. I don't think they murdered Shane like Lorraine says it was suicide mission. Okay, Jay. They had fear working. Jay didn't want to go back home. Very well may be. So a lot of things going on in this case. You know, I had been asked a couple times since I started doing this last year, what case do you think is going to get solved first of all the ones that Unfound has covered? And really, I started the show right after I covered the disappearance of Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. I would have never picked this one. I would have never picked it. I'm just being honest. It would have now. I thought that this was one. I'm not saying that it was unsolvable, but it would have not even been in my top 5. But once again, though, this just shows you how we think we know a lot about the case, and we don't. Nobody ever knew about the insurance card. And it's probably the case, that's probably a fact in a lot of cases that Unfound covers, that even the family doesn't know some of the police know. Why? The police are under no obligation to tell anybody anything. It's why I don't interview them for the program. They're just going to go and give you just cliched answers, so it's just a big waste of time. But that insurance card, it's fairly easy to say, if that insurance card is not found those private investigators, maybe this case is never solved, ever. Not that it just took all 18 and a half years, but never. I could live to be 100, and I got 53 years to go. Never solved. And I'd like to think that in all these missing persons cases that mistakes have been made like that, and they just haven't put it all together yet. So, you know, we try to be as complete as we can on Unfound, but there's just sometimes facts that you can't get because nobody knows about them but the police, and they're not going to tell anybody. In retrospect, maybe I should have looked these private investigators up. I might have thought about doing that, and maybe if I'd talked to Tom Pryor, he would have said something about this insurance card. Now, that would have been interesting. Could police be charged with a crime if they could prove something? Sure. Allison, now I just need the Kessie case to be solved, and my mind will be completely blown. I'm guessing that the Jennifer Kessie disappearance is quite different from this one. And I don't think that one had anything to do with drugs and tweakers and anything, in my opinion. Kate, I would have never guessed this would have been the case either. The best lead they had was a mythical video from a crack house. Yeah. So once again, when I do Unfound, I'm trying to give you as much information as I can. But I never believe in any case that I've gotten all the information as possible to get. There are just some things you can't find out. You know, it's easy to say now, hindsight 2020. Maybe there is a way that if I would have talked to the right person and found out about the insurance card, that'd have been something. But, you know, hindsight's 2020. It's easy to see that now. I don't think I could have seen that back in September when I was preparing to cover this case. But it's something that I'm going to learn from, something I'm going to think about as I continue to cover cases for Unfound. And I'm really going to try to learn from this. And I hope we can all learn from something from this, because as I started this show with, the evil that men do lives on and on. Well, we have to try to learn something from that evil that's been committed and make sure that it doesn't happen again. Or at least if it does happen, we know where to start looking, and the police can learn from this as well. My fear is that it doesn't seem that the police learn much from prior cases. I don't know how much they take this case over here and try to apply it to this one over here. I don't know. But that's what we're trying to do with Unfound. And I'm going to try to learn, and I'm going to try to, you know, not just tell you about these cases, but, you know, try to teach you what I've learned in interviewing all of these people, because if the public can get smarter about these crimes and how they're committed, why they're committed, who does it, what to look for, then less crimes are going to be committed, and the ones that are out there are going to get solved. And that's going to be the goal, because at this point, Laura and Ashley, they haven't been found. They're not alive. We can't bring them back to life. Just can't. So the best we can do is learn from these cases that eventually get solved and figure out how we can apply Ashley and Laura's disappearance to all the other disappearances that we know about. And I'm going to continue to do that. So I would urge you, if you go to Unfound Podcast discussion group on Facebook and you go down through some of the links and everything, you will find the affidavit. I read it in about 20 minutes. I had to go kind of fast through it, skipped a few parts, I will admit. But if you're going to take the time, it may take you an hour. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's a little confusing, using all these initials and things. So I would take your time with it, but it's definitely worth the read. It's definitely worth it. How an investigation gets bungled at the beginning, and then guys, or women too, any detectives, I don't want to be sexist here. There were women involved in this solution too. These detectives, police officers that came in and did this, they had to come in and wipe up the mess that the people before them created. Whether there was some hijinks there was some conspiracy, or just incompetence, or like Jay says, maybe the sheriff was a tweak or two. I guess we'll find that out eventually, hopefully, Jay. So there you go. Cases of Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. The episode was called From the Ashes. I believe that episode came out on October 3rd, 2017. I posted it in the discussion group when all this was going down. If you're not familiar with it, please go back and listen to my interview with Lauria Bible. Maybe this will be interesting. That you can, now that you know what happened, you can listen to her talk about it. Jessica, welcome tonight. Thank you for joining in. If you missed the first part of this, it will be up on YouTube later. And Diane says, keep an eye on your kids. Absolutely true. It's no doubt in that disappearance that Ashley and Laura were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. In particular, Laura, being that she was over there to sleep over. Wrong place, wrong time. It was not a plan to take them. It was a plan to get drugs, get money, murder the Freemans, and get away. And then the girls were there and just got in the way. So that is that. Very sad. Very sad. And if I don't know if I'll ever get to talk to Laureen, of course, I'm going to give her plenty of time before I contact her. And I haven't talked to her in a long time. So we'll see what she has to say about all of this. I don't know if she'll allow me to tell you what she says, but when the time is right, I'll try to get in contact with her. And if she allows me to talk about that, I will. If she doesn't, then I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to talk about it. Let's move on to the original Night Stalker, which, of course, also even got bigger national headlines in the United States than the solving of Laura and Ashley's disappearance. You should know, I posted this picture earlier today. I have this book. I've had this book for about 10 years. This book, until the recent book by Michelle McNamara, and we're going to talk about her. This was the most complete book ever written on the original Night Stalker until just recently. This book's been out for a long time, and I think I got it about 10 years ago. I think it's the first true crime book I ever bought, and I read it from cover to cover twice. It might be an interesting, if you got it now too, now that case has been solved, just to go, Larry Crompton was one of the detectives that worked on the case way back in the 70s into the 80s. And he was a guy who Michelle McNamara got to know. She delved into this serial killer. But an interesting book. And I've had it for about 10 years. It's on my bookshelf right by my bed. So I know a lot about, I'm not necessarily, the interesting thing is I'm not necessarily into serial killers, although I like that movie Zodiac with Robert Downey Jr. and Mark Ruffalo. I think that's an excellent movie, but I'm not necessarily into the Zodiac killer. Not really into serial killers, Ted Bundy, whoever, because most of those cases are solved. I'm more interested in things that are unsolved and solving them. But with the original Night Stalker, I think the reason that it caught some of my interest is because this guy, he wasn't preying upon women, for example, that were walking a street late at night. He was going into people's homes where we all feel safest and terrorize these people where they feel safest. That takes a real evil type of person. And that's what I think made him so different from all the others that we know about. I mean, I'm not saying crimes don't happen in people's houses, but this was a guy who got away with it time after time after time. And it took all these years later, years after he actually committed a crime, at least that we know of, for him to be caught. I watched the news conference today, and I just wrote some notes down as it was happening. He's 72 now. This is also a case like Laura and Ashley's case where the guy, when he was doing this, he was older than people thought. As I remember it, they were thinking that the original Night Stalker, if he were to be caught now, might have been in his late 50s into early 60s. This guy was a full at least 10 years older than they thought he would be. Jay asked me, is any chance he's the Zodiac killer as well? I don't think so, Jay. The Zodiac killer, at least the way people portrayed him, was a lot bigger guy than this guy, Joseph James D'Angelo. He's a very small guy in more ways than one, as if you've ever heard about. I'm not going to get into this. This is a PG show. But Carletta, welcome tonight. If you missed the beginning, you can catch it at YouTube later. Mary says he'll probably die before he goes to trial. Maybe. Nobody would, I mean, looking at this guy now at 72 years old, there is no way anybody would have picked him out of a lineup. Ever. But if you go back and look at the pictures of him, and I posted one from the late 70s, he does look like at least one of the sketches that was drawn back at the time. Now, the tough part about, I think, this case is what made it difficult Greg laughed, Jay laughed. They got my joke. The men would get that joke. But I lost my train of thought for a moment. Nobody would have picked him out of a lineup, but if you look at the picture, the tough part of what I was going to say about this case is that there were multiple sketches, multiple descriptions of who this guy was. I think that made this case harder to solve. And it reminds me of the Mikhail Biggs case from a couple weeks ago that we talked about the sketches. And how can we even have sketches if nobody even saw what happened? It's a little hard to understand. As it is in the case of the original Night Stalker, there were these multiple sketches, and now we know that one of them did look like Joseph James D'Angelo, but how would we have known that? You know, how do you know that? You wouldn't know that. The other thing, and this is distressing because he was a cop. He was a cop in Exeter, California. He was a cop in Exeter, California while he was committing the ransacking of Visalia. And then while he was raping those 50 women in that area, you know, to the east of San Francisco, he was a cop in Auburn, California, which is where he lives now. He was a cop, and in fact, the photo that I had of him posted that makes him look like one of the sketches from back then is his cop photo. He's in a picture with another cop and two kids, and they're doing something. I don't know what was going on. But there he was, this nice little, what I would call a kind of effeminate mustache. Not a big guy, but nobody would have ever been able to pick him out of a lineup now. And that's a good thing that we have DNA these days. So he was a cop, and dare I say it, cops being rumored to be involved in some of these disappearances they cover comes up way too much. I will tell you, we already know about the disappearance of Robin Abrams and how her cop boyfriend, who was married, he and some other cops, I believe, caused her to disappear in Beecher, Illinois. We've, I think, covered a couple other disappearances where cops were looked at as being a possibility. And I can tell you right now, I don't want to give anything away, but I'm looking at covering a disappearance within the next month where I'm pretty sure that a sheriff and some of his deputies almost for sure had something to do with the disappearance. Sheriffs, deputies, police officers, detectives, these types of people pop up too much in these cases that I cover. All right. Jay says, what's really crazy is he stopped for a while. Yeah, Jay, we're going to talk about that. Thank you. Yes, Mary. The reason that Joseph James D'Angelo lost his job as a cop in Auburn is because he got caught shoplifting a hammer and dog repellent. Another case that was involved a cop was the serial killer Gerard Schaefer and the disappearance of Debbie Lowe from right here in Florida. There's another one where cops involved, just in his example. Greg says it makes sense then why he was so calm while committing the crimes that he was a cop. Yeah, it makes sense why he got away with them too. I'm not saying the other cops were allowed to get away with it. I mean, there were so many investigations and everything. I don't believe these cops were I don't think, it's not obvious to me that the cops at this point made any mistakes back then, unlike the Ashley and Laura disappearance. In this case, I just think that this guy planned this stuff out. He knew what the police were going to do. He picked the right areas. He probably knew where the cops were going to be at any certain time, and that's how he picked his areas. Jay, isn't Ellie pretty high on the domestic violence offender stat? They're human as well. True. Some of the witnesses thought he was in the military. Well, Greg, he was in the military. He was in the Navy. And in fact, there's been a belief among amateur researchers, investigators out here that thought he was a cop because he could be, because he did get away with these things and knew, escape routes and how the cops would kind of, when they're eventually called, what area the cops would be coming from. I mean, that's been out there for a long time. I mean, well before I got this book, ever since I heard about the original Night Stalker online, I mean, that's always been a rumor. And it turns out it was right. I think what the public got wrong, once again, is the age. This guy was a lot older. They were looking for somebody who was younger than the guy ended up being. And it may be the reason they thought he was younger is because, once again, he is not a big guy. I maybe did kind of look young for his age at the time, as far as I can tell. So yes, Greg, he was in the military. In fact, the picture I posted is his military picture with like his white sailor, with that blue tie, the white uniform with the blue. I posted that picture in the discussion group earlier today. Yeah, he was in the military. But it's something that I did predict. Kind of felt good about is I thought that I never believed this guy was dead. In reading what I read, what I think I knew is if I thought he was alive, and I thought that he was hiding under everybody's nose. And the reason I thought that is because a lot of people looked at other crimes across the United States to see is there anything similar. No, that means to me that maybe the guy never left the state. Never left the state. There was all the proof out there that no crimes like what the original Night Stalker did in any of the other 49 states. That means to me he probably quit, but he's also in California. And he was right in the area that he terrorized 35, 40 years ago. Shane, I completely agree. Even if he was seen, no one would bat an eye. Dorothy, shine flashlight in people's eyes just like the cops do. True. Mary, I wouldn't doubt he has more victims. We're going to find out about that, Mary. I posted that in the group. I think that we are going to find out that there are some rapes, if not murders, in California that have not been connected to him yet. And it may very well be that there may be one or two outside of California. And keep in mind, after he got fired as a cop, he became a truck driver. And we know that then if that's the case, then anything's possible. But just in general, as I was talking to people online for years before I started Unfound, there was just no proof that there were other crimes in the United States that looked like these. So I just could draw the conclusion he's probably in California still. Maybe he got put in jail for something, or he got a family and couldn't find the time. Well, we now know that he was committing these crimes while he had a family. So there's that. And Allison, I agree, Mary. Shaney, why would he stop? Shaney, that's a good question. I think this goes back to the Dennis Rader, the BTK. He was also a guy who just stopped cold turkey of killing people. The reason he got caught is because he let his ego get in the way, and he was afraid that people were forgetting about him as a prolific killer, so he started contacting the cops, and that's what got him caught. But he stopped cold turkey. And I think that FBI profile, I have to say, profiling of criminals, I think, is a very inexact science anyway. But if we're going to continue, the FBI is going to continue to do that, they're going to have to stop thinking that these men who do this are obsessed. I think there is a lot of evidence to say that they aren't. They are able to stop. They enjoy it, but they're able to stop. Just like we enjoy things that we stop. We enjoy eating chocolate. Well, if we want to go on a diet, we stop eating it. I think it's kind of the same thing. I love chocolate, but I'm not obsessed by it. Carlotta, is he known as the East Area Rapist, or that's something? No, it's the same thing, Carlotta. Started as the Visalia Ramsacker, East Area Rapist, original Night Stalker, and then most recently, Golden State Killer. Yeah, Allison, he became a truck driver. Yes, that's true. Yes, he did, Alan. He was just on the road doing it. It's very possible, Allison. It's just at this point, there's no proof of that. I would have to agree with you, Allison. There might be one or two out there. Just no proof of that at this time. Exactly my thoughts, Jay. He says BTK. He asked his own brother-in-law what he thought of the AR. Sarah, I read that. Yes, if you don't know what Sarah's talking about, at some family function, Joseph James D'Angelo's brother-in-law talked to Joseph James D'Angelo about East Area Rapist, the original Night Stalker. Thought, what do you think about it? And James D'Angelo, Joe D'Angelo, who is the original Night Stalker, said, well, if I were to ever run into him, I'd kill him. Very interesting. Wow. I can't imagine living in that neighborhood tonight, knowing that the guy down the street was the guy. That has to be really, really weird. And now the question is, does his wife know? Did any of his other family members know? That'll be interesting if they're going to talk, to hear what they have to say. Stephanie, thank you. No excuses for murderers. Yeah. Mary, his family are victims also. Well, we'll know. We'll find, we'll see, Mary. We'll see. We'll find out if they, if they knew nothing, if they didn't know anything. We'll see. Sarah says, I think he's separated now. Okay. Shaney, how did they decide it was him? Well, they used DNA. But I did not get out of the news conference exactly what led them to him to even test his DNA. That was something to me that was unclear. It may very well be a tip that they got, somebody whose name is being withheld, something like that. Was it something because of Michelle McNamara's book that came out? They put it in, started thinking back to that time. Possible, but I don't know. It was the DNA that has kind of caused them to go and pick this guy up. I don't know how they knew to test him. I don't know that. Lynette said, I read that his wife wrote a book. Is that true? That's news to me, Lynette. I don't know. Alice has said they said it was a tip. Right. I heard something about his daughter, but not sure, Sarah says. Well, Patton Oswalt's wife wrote a book. Right. That's Michelle McNamara. And she had been covering this. If you don't know, I actually had some email exchanges with Michelle McNamara. I'm going to say, was it after I left? Was it after I moved to Florida? I think it was. So 2012, maybe. She and I had a couple conversations about the original Night Stalker, just some theories that I had, and that's when she was first getting into it. And I'd gone to her website, going back to when I still lived in Las Vegas, where she detailed a lot of disappearances and unsolved cases. MJ says, it makes a real quandary for DNA testing. Rumor has it that a relative did 23andMe testing. Okay. Greg, well, he left plenty of DNA at the crime scene. That's right. Yeah, because back then, early 70s, there was no prediction that you'd ever be able to use that to identify somebody, Greg. Yep. And they're lucky they saved it. When Michelle died, her husband finished the books. Yes, that's exactly right. Did her book have an effect? I think that Patton Oswalt has been asked about that today. I think that all he says that the book brought it back into the national consciousness about this. I think that he is shying away from saying that, the book actually helped them solve the case. He's not going that far. I would tend to believe in him. Something else that came up. If you will remember, maybe some of you don't know as well, but for some of you who know well, at one of the rapes that he committed, he kept saying the name Bonnie, Bonnie. Well, it just so happens that his wife's name, at least at the time, I believe, was Bonnie. So, and still, after all these years, they couldn't put that all together, and it took DNA. Maybe somebody knows a little bit more about the Bonnie utterance that he made. And this was a guy who, after he did these things, called these women back, terrorizing him, and then he quit in 1981. And then there was the what we call the final murder in Orange County, way outside the area where he committed the rest of the crimes, up in like Ventura County and then up near San Francisco. Mary said his children are victims. 3 girls just found out their father is a monster. Yeah. Sarah, I saw the warrants were from Ventura County and some of the people were at the rest, so thinking he might go there first. I was wondering about that earlier today, Sarah. A lot of counties involved. I don't know who's going to get the first crack at them. And Greg said he would start whining about his mother. That's right, Greg. That's true, too. Right. Allison, he was engaged to Bonnie, and she called off the marriage, which I think was a trigger for him. There you go, Allison. Yes. Thank you. I knew some of you knew some of these intricacies of this case. Thank you. A trigger. I got it, Allison. Thank you. Yes. So that might have it further enraged him. Did him getting fired as a cop because he started murdering these people in 1979? Did him getting fired as a cop push him further to start murdering instead of raping, just raping these women, but murdering their men too? Possible. Possible. Let's move on. What do I got? And the thing we have to remember is that what this proves is that there are killers among us. With all of the unsolved murders in the United States, with all of the unsolved disappearances in the United States, there are murderers walking among us who never went to jail. And I think, if I am correct, except for this shoplifting thing from 1979, I don't know if Joe D'Angelo has any other charges against him anywhere. If anybody knows anything about that, I'd like to hear that. I couldn't find anything. Maybe you did. Shannon, I read that Bonnie was his fiance and married someone else. Mary, I wonder if he kept the stuff he stole. Mary, excellent question. Does he have a storage unit somewhere that he's been using all these years that he's been paying on? Possible. Sarah, they said he was a really bad temper. They heard him screaming a lot. The neighbors, that's right. But they also made it sound like most people got along with him in the neighborhood. He just, once they go out, he's kind of fly off the handle. But otherwise, I heard that they just kind of got along with him. Sarah says, Mary, they took out the box after box of his stuff, hoping to find that stuff. Would he hide it at home? Would he store it at home? I don't know. You would think that if he was carrying that stuff around all these years, that one of the women that he was with, who he's living with, would have come upon it, or one of his children. Just an idea. Mary says, that's the scary part. How well do we know anyone? Andrea? There's all sorts of different philosophies that, people have about human nature. I'm not the biggest fan of human nature. I think that at our core, we like to do bad things, not necessarily murder, but we know how we like to kind of cheat sometimes. And sometimes, we let our angers and passions get in the way of our rational judgment. That's what I believe human nature is. There's a reason that we all have to have laws to get along with each other. There's a reason. And I'm not saying that a killer like the original Night Stalker lives in all of us, but we know through history what happens when people are just allowed to do anything that they want to do. It's pretty ugly. It's pretty ugly. So, Greg says, I bet he does have a place to hide his trophies. Sarah says, yes, they saw him yesterday, Tuesday, doing yard work. He had no idea what was going on. I guess not. Sarah, yeah, but BTK had his stuff in his house. That's true. Kept it in his sedge. Jay, to try to minimize exposure being vulnerable is all we can do. To try to minimize exposure to being vulnerable. Jay, you're right. You're right. No matter if you're, a person who, believes in original sin, or if you're an atheist, I really, I'm not getting to get into that. But I think that we know that human nature, as I like to point out many times, is that we as humans are capable of some of the best things on this earth. Of all, if we're going to look at ourselves as animals, like any other mammal out there, a bird or whatever else, we are capable of some of the kindest things on this earth, giving to others, helping others. And in fact, we use our minds to help other animals, veterinary work, healing dogs and cats. We take care of them, and horses, and saving the whales and polar bears and everything else. We do much more for those animals than they probably do for us. We've extended the lives of, through our technological advances, on and on and on. We are capable of some of the best things on this earth, we as humans. On the other hand, we are the only animals that kill for fun. we are the only animals that torture things that we capture. You know, a spider, if it catches a fly in its web, goes right over there and kills that fly immediately, wraps the thing up to preserve, to eat sometime later. You know, leopards that go after wildebeest and tigers that go after wildebeest, they don't torture those animals. They just kill them immediately and eat them immediately. Humans, some humans kill for fun, kill other humans for fun. And so we are capable of both extremes. And we should never underestimate that. Never should. And we see whether there are people on drugs or they're not on drugs. They have a bad childhood, they don't have a bad childhood. I mean, we know, that's why all of this stuff is so hard to predict, because we know a lot of children who grew up in very horrible circumstances that grow up to be awesome people. Awesome people. Then on the other hand, we have the Menendez brothers. There is no rhyme or reason to any of it. You know, Mary says, thank you, Ed, for all you do. Keep driving. Keep finding the foot if I got to drive. Mary, totally understand. Okay, Mary's leaving. Thank you for your comments tonight. Thank you for reminding me about how the Freeman son was shot by cops. Thank you. That was a good one. Lynette says, do you think some are born to kill? I mean, it's in their blood. No, I don't. What I believe is that I believe that our minds, yes, people have psychological problems. And if that's what you mean, then I guess yes. But for people that maybe have not been diagnosed as something as we call a mental problem, there are a lot of people who have killed people that had no mental problems. You know, I think just in our nature as humans, there's just part of our minds that can be devious. That's what I believe. And in fact, that might be the chapter for volume 3 that I haven't written yet. Maybe. Dorothy says, more homeless dogs are probably saved than homeless humans. I love dogs, but people need to put people first. It's probably true, Dorothy. So these are the things that go through my mind when I think about the original Night Stalker. Yes, is he an anomaly within humanity, within human civilization? Yes. Yes, he is. But I think that he is just at the extreme of probably some of the bad thoughts that go through our heads. And we know what we'd like to do to people that cut us off in traffic, etc., etc., etc. Sarah, I've lived in California most of my life. My daughter and family are in Sacramento. We live near them. I've read everything I can, watched anything I can find on this guy. He has scared me my whole life. I'm so glad he's caught. I can't wait for more details. Sarah, I completely understand. And I was watching that. They interviewed some people from the area, and these people realized what it was like to grow up in the 1970s in that area and being afraid. Yeah. Now let's get the Zodiac. That's an interesting case too. But that's the original Night Stalker. You know, I know a lot of people have, you can't believe that it's, now granted, both in the case of Lauren Ashley's case, in this case, are there going to be trials? I want to go back to Lauren Ashley for a moment, if I may. Here's the bad part. If you've read the affidavit, at the end of it is the discussion that the investigators recently had with Ronnie Dean Busick. Unfortunately, and I'm not here to be negative, I'm not here to be a cynic, I'm not here to depress or make Laureen Bible and her family sad or anything like that. From what I can tell from that affidavit, David, I don't think he's going to give up where those two girls are. I don't think he's going to do it. And we know how much that happens in murder cases and everything. We know how much it happens. I just get the feeling he's not going to do it. I get the feeling that he is trying to distance himself away from all of this that happened that night. Although it's been talked about they're in a pit and everything else, I'm not sure that Ronnie Busick is going to give up where Ashley and Laura are. And that would be, it's not unusual, and it's very, very sad. It's very sad. I should have mentioned that when we talked about that. I have it written in my notes and forgot to mention it. But that's a very relevant part of that case because they're not found yet. And, you know, show's called Unfound. Well, they're not totally found yet. The case, I believe, is solved. You know, there may be a trial and everything, and we'll see how that goes. But just like in Tara Grinstead's case, it's solved, but she hasn't been found yet. Well, it looks like Lauren Ashley's case is solved, but they're not found yet. And just reading the tea leaves the way I try to do, I don't think Ronnie's going to give them up where they are. I think he knows, but I don't think he's going to say. Jay says, I don't think he knows. He was a useful idiot. I have to tell you, Jay, I read that affidavit and I read something totally different from that. Just a difference of opinion. I just have a really, really bad, not to go all Star Wars and everybody, but I have a really bad feeling about this. And then the original Night Stalker, I don't know if he's going to plead guilty. We'll see if he wants to confess to any other crimes or whatever else. But, of course, everybody's going to be keeping tabs on that. Me, I think that we're not going to probably talk about this next week. We're going to get back to what we do, talking about the cases that Unfound covers. Of course, we did that at the beginning of the program, talking about the disappearance of JR Molohon, who is going to be Friday's case. JR disappeared from Norfolk, Virginia on August 15th, 2015. His truck was found in Corolla, North Carolina a couple days later. The interview will be with his wife, Julie, and the episode is going to be called Diary for Disappearance. And we then talked about the original. We talked about Lauren Ashley Freeman, went through the affidavit as best I could in the time that I had to read it today. And then we finished with the original Night Stalker and Joseph James D'Angelo, former cop, former truck driver, who's now being charged with the rape of over 50 women and the murder of 12 people. Those cases, they haven't come to an end yet. There's still a lot of questions that need to be asked and everything, but the men who were responsible for those crimes have been caught. And of course, in Lauren Ashley's case, 2 of them are dead, but the men responsible are in custody. Maybe from that, we'll get to find out more information, hopefully. Greg J., in my opinion, Zodiac is dead or in prison for some other crime. MJ, do you think he'll hold out for leverage or just for control? MJ, possibly. But we'll just have to see. I don't know. His sister, only leverage I can see, have her plead with him. Greg, any Unfound news to share? I think that we've done quite a bit tonight, Greg. You're going to hear about some Unfound news on Friday. It's really about Lauren Ashley for people who don't watch this video on Wednesday nights, where I'm going to mention that. I'm going to mention some information about Volume 3. And going to mention, also, before I go, the next article at triblive.com is going to be coming out this Sunday. It's the disappearance of Kathleen Kelly from Springdale, Pennsylvania in 1981. I'll be linking to that. That's also mentioned on Friday's episode, Greg. But no more Unfound news for tonight. Sherry, I missed everything. I'm trying to find the update. Good job on Al Copper case. Crazy. First guy to find the causeway. Guilty. No way that phone was pinged in that short amount of time. Sherry, you're right. Greg says, LOL, cool. Sherry, not causeway. I meant car. I'm trying to find the update. Good job on the Al Copper case. Crazy. First guy to find the car. Yes. Well, everybody, I'm going to be going. My voice, I think, is giving out a little bit. It's been almost an hour and a half. I told you we're just going to do this until we get the end of it. I thank you all for tuning in. If you tuned in late, this is going to be posted to YouTube before the night is up, Eastern time, and I will post to it on the page, in the group, on Twitter, wherever else, and then you can catch what you missed about this. But I started this episode talking about the evil that men do, because that's what we talked about tonight, the evil that men do. But luckily, those evil men have been caught. So I leave you all. It's my favorite time of the week. Thank you all for tuning in. You will hear me Friday, the disappearance of JR Molohon. And I'll be seeing you on the group where we can continue to discuss whatever you want to talk about. Good night, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. By the way, I was wearing a shirt given to me by Mary Lau for her nonprofit Center for Hope. Please give her a donation if you can spare it. I was wearing that shirt totally forgot all about tonight. That's the shirt I was wearing. Center for Hope, Mary Lowell. Good night. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me that you tune in here every Wednesday. Good night.